Here we are in California. We have 6.2 million school children, 3 million of whom cannot read or write at grade level. So, we have a teacher's pension fund with $100 billion unfunded liability. But hey, things are happy days in California. So of course we rank in the bottom 5 or 10 states in all the different subject matters that they do standardized testing on at the national level. So I'm just going to go through some of the issues that are current and face us. So the ones I'm going to talk about are the following: the math mess, ethnic studies, the new rule on late start times, school discipline problems, and the condition for charter schools right now. And then I'll close with a few ideas about what could be done about some of these things. So let's start with late start times. This seems pretty innocuous. There is there's some research out there that teenagers don't like to get up. I've even heard of grown-ups are not at their best in the early morning. Well, so they're going to institutionalize this. Now, again, you might say, well, maybe it disrupts some families' lives that have a schedule that doesn't match exactly. But I'll tell you who it really hurts. We have a program in California. It's not perfect. It probably needs some patriotic additions here and there, but it's called International Baccalaureate, and it's high-quality academic requirements. It's really, you have to really master a lot of important material in order to have a school that's really doing it, and the kids that go through it learn a lot. But it's so packed that you need to start early. Well, they will make this impossible to have this program. And this is really a shame, because we do a lot for low-performing kids in California. We haven't really been successful in those programs. In fact, the one thing that we had that was being successful, that was demanding more in math. We used to have algebra in 8th grade as our expectation, and we got 2/3 of the kids to algebra 1 in 8th grade. That was an amazing thing, and it was hugely important for Latino kids and African American kids. They had 4 and 5 times multiple gains in that area over the course of 10 years. But anyway, we now have Common Core, so we've lost all that fabulous gain. But pretty much every other program to help low-performing kids has not really succeeded in California. But we don't do enough for the high-performing kids, the kids that might have potential to really shine academically and do much better. And this, in the National Baccalaureate, was a program that is aimed at satisfying that need in the health block. So then let's talk about school discipline. So, one of the principal reasons that teachers that leave the profession give for leaving is that maintaining classroom and schoolyard discipline has just gotten out of hand. They're not supported by the administrative staff, and the administrative staff points to the legal advice they're given, and the lawyers point to the laws that courts and the legislature have imposed. But whoever you want to point the blame at, it's really a big problem right now. And if you don't have day-to-day safety, what parent can feel confident in sending his or her child to school? I mean, it's just fundamental. We not only want academics, we want the people not to be attacked, not to be knifed or beaten up or whatever. So now they have a supposed solution to this. The progressives have a thing called restorative justice. And, in principle, I can't really be against restorative justice in some sort of abstract way. I mean, indeed, interestingly enough, the Japanese penal system is based on a kind of idea of restorative justice, and that is that, you know, if you steal something from somebody, you have to give it back, and maybe a multiple giving it back, and you have to apologize to the person that you took from, and so forth. So you're trying to restore the status quo, including the psychological damage that you impose by this crime. The problem is it doesn't really work in a school setting, because the kids don't really own anything, and it's kind of weird to have the parents buy off the thing the kid does, and that, you know, it just doesn't work. So what do they do instead? This is their idea of restorative justice. We sit in a peace circle, right? You're already alert from the name, and you engage in psychobabble until everybody says, I want to quit. I'm completely feeling happy about the victim, and the perpetrator feel all happy, and the community milieu has been restored. You know what? This doesn't work. So a man that Lance and I both know named Max Eden has gathered together all the studies, and there are a number of studies. This is tried in a lot of schools right now. It's popular. And all the broadcasting of the fact that it doesn't work has not stopped it. It's growing. So this, among many other problems that lead to the schoolroom discipline problem, has contributed to the fact that the children aren't safe, and the teachers aren't safe, and the administrators. Nobody's safe. Okay. So another thing is, a man named Robert Pondisio has just written a book about a set of successful charter schools in New York City. And these take quite challenging kids, at least on paper, in terms of the educational background of their parents and things like that. And they turn out unbelievably successful kids that do better in terms of college admission and stuff than kids from Scarsdale, which is like the equivalent of Atherton in Northern California, or San Marino in Southern California, whatever. It's unbelievable what they do. Now, what do? They demand a ton of the parents. Okay, I mean, that's maybe the main thing they do. But they have hardcore discipline in the classes. It's no fooling around. Education and academics are primary. So we know that discipline, school discipline, attention to academics, is a huge success maker for the kind of kids that are challenged and are in trouble. Okay, enough of the easy ones. Now let me explain the math mess. So in California, we adopted Common Core, which is an outline of a curriculum. And as I said, it drops everything back a year from where we used to be in California. So we have plenty of evidence that it hasn't worked in the sense of what was promised. So what was promised was, hey, our kids are going to learn more. There's going to be, we'll see that this will be a successful program. Well, we have test results, both on the Common Core related test, and those are flat or mildly declining. And we have national tests called NAEP, and they compare the different states. And again, there's no math gain under Common Core whatsoever. So, $10 billion in California later, extra on top of what they would normally spend, $80 billion at the national level, Common Core. Nothing, I mean, except waste all this money and time and lives of children. So anyway, so not only that, but before Common Core came in, the amount of remediation that needed to be done in the CSU system, so that's the California State University system, and so a lot of children go into that, and we have Sacramento State, Cal State Sacramento. So the rate of needed remediation, so for kids that were going to be taking math, the kids were going to be taking math-related subjects, had been declining, the numbers of students that were required. But once Common Core came in, the officials began claiming that because by definition, everybody that comes out of Common Core is supposed to be college and career ready. That's like the middle name of Common Core, so to speak. Okay, so they now said, oh no, we don't need any remediation. And not only that, so these old remediation classes used to be not credit bearing. So you came into UC Berkeley, you came into Cal State Sacramento, and you took this no credit class in English or math or whatever your serious deficiency was that you came out of high school with, and it wasn't credit bearing because it wasn't college level, right? So they decided, well, this is slowing down the rate, the time, and making them have to go to school more, an extra year or longer, and so we're worried about the impact. There's some kind of racial or language, Latinos maybe are having to take a lot of these classes, which might mean that the high schools were shortchanging them, and so forth. African American kids disproportionately maybe taking these classes. Again, and so help them in high school, give them a good education. So what they decided was, okay, we're gonna combine, these are kids that would fail taking a college class in math. So we're gonna give them a class that combines first year math in college with the remediation that they don't already have. So essentially 2 years in one. We're gonna have these failing students take 2 years in one. That should work really well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you're thinking, how dumb can these people be? All right,
Exactly.
So that's probably not going to work. So the probable resultant of this is going to be they will just give college credit for high school remediation. So the math professors, of course, in the Cal State system are aghast at what's happening. They're giving these kids, and they're complaining to their department chairs and to their administrators. These kids don't know math. We used to have kids that knew more math. So they're demanding that the K-12 system add an additional required year of math. This is really going on. I'm not making it up. And of course, you can blame them. So what is the response of the K-12 system to this? So they're adding an additional math course. It's consumer math or checkbook math. This is the thing that we spent the 1990s trying to get rid of as a high school class because it's, no-brainer math, okay? So that's the math mess. It's not over yet. Okay, so now I'm going to say something about charter schools. So you know what charter schools are. These are public schools, but they're essentially run separately from the regular local district school. And so they're independent, and they have most of the rule book. There's a huge set of things that regular public schools have to follow. So the charter schools just have to follow racial integration, health, safety, fire, that sort of stuff, okay? So they're pretty much independent, other than that. And they do pretty well, and also, if they don't do that well, they can disappear from the scene more easily than a regular public school, which no matter how badly it does, doesn't go away. So unfortunately, of course, there are some charter schools that are not that great, and some of them last longer than they should, but that's another whole speech. Okay, so the unions are completely against charter schools. Not only do they often outperform the regular public schools with a similar socioeconomic population, their neighboring schools, but they're non-unionized usually, and the teachers have much more flexibility, and they don't like that contrast, so they try to crush them. So Governor Brown who had many faults. How many people think Governor Brown had a few faults? But on this is the first time you heard Governor Brown defended in front of you. But on this issue, he who had set up a charter school when he was mayor of Oakland, a military academy, believe it or not, he resisted overreach, lots of regulation of the charter schools. And he would send back bills or tell people, I'm going to veto this if you send this to me. Well, Newsom, of course, it's hard to say how you could do this, but he's definitely worse than Jerry Brown. It's hard to believe, but, and he's more in hock to and servile to special interests like the teachers union. I think there's no doubt. And he has less of a backbone if there is occasion to stand up. Anyway, so they just passed a law called AB 1505 and a companion piece. And here's what it does. If your charter school, so there's two pieces of charter schools, there's initial authorization and then you have to renew your charter. So you go before a chartering agency, which could be your local school board, could be your county board, could be your state board. But anyway, point is, it mostly starts anyway with your local board. This local board can say, you duplicate our programs, therefore we're not going to charter you. Now this is crazy because one kind of charter school can offer essentially the same programs as a regular public school, but do it better. Right? What's wrong with that? That's a kind of choice that ought to be certainly there. The second thing that it does, and this is the most insidious of all, is if you're a school that feels you're in some kind of financial jeopardy, which I'm sure every school district in California feels and could defend the claim that, no, we're terribly threatened. We don't have all the money we want or need. You can say, oh, we'll lose money because we won't have the daily attendance from these kids to get money in public schools by the kids showing up, right? And if the kid is going to a charter school, the regular public schools don't get the money. So they can deny a charter or refuse to renew a charter for that. This crushes the charter school movement and situation. Okay, so the most fun of these topics is ethnic studies. So I had a column in the Wall Street Journal at the end of July called California Wants to Teach Your Children That Capitalism is Racist. So they proposed a very bad model curriculum for ethnic studies, and it was put together by a bunch of professors who teach ethnic studies and some K-12 teachers. There's some districts that have some of this already. And so it's very much inside baseball. It's full of all sorts of language that I'm sure is familiar to you. You use it in your everyday work. Nepantlas, praxis, counter-Germanic, miso-noir, femmes of color. I know cis-hetero-patriarchy. I know this is on your tip of your tongue regular basis. So it's not just that it's full of this insider jargon that's really not teacher-friendly and certainly not parent-friendly and very tendentious in sort of pointing in an ideological and pushing thinking and curriculum in an ideological direction. But they're also doing some other really bad things. They're pitting ethnic groups against each other. So particularly Jews and Arabs. It has quite a bit of pro-Palestinian Arab material in it, and it doesn't really satisfactorily get at anti-Semitism and the horrible things that have been done to Jews over centuries. So In addition, this is part of the whole pattern of the thing, which is that it's not about the history and current situation of ethnic groups, but it's about victimhood. So it's not about the positive achievements, the entrepreneurs, the inventors, the scientists, it's not about that. It's about, every bad thing that ever happened to one of the especially attended to ethnic groups. And that's what it's about. So as a man with many faults, but sometimes a man who is right on target, Bill Honig, a former state superintendent in California, once said about this ethnic studies curriculum, he said, it should be usable not just in Berkeley, but also in Bakersfield. So anyway, this ethnic studies program was so crazy that it considered the Arabian Nights folktales to be anti-Arab. Okay, think on this for a while. The Arabian Nights are Arab folktales. Okay, so but evil viziers, princesses, flying carpets, magic lamps that you can rub. This is anti-Arab. So we see what depths of ridiculousness and political correctness here. So my article, a bunch of other related articles, the Jewish groups seeing that this was directed against them. This whole thing came together quite rapidly. I've been in the school reform business many decades. This is really the fastest turnaround I have ever seen in something I was working on. Within a few weeks, the department withdrew this model curriculum. There was still a fighting between the state board, which is appointed by the governor, who wants to be president and possibly doesn't want to be saddled with this, and the superintendent, who was elected on his own and who has an extremely sorry record in Contra Costa County when he was on a school board, which, catastrophic school district when he was there. I could spend another whole talk on that. But, so this board said, we're going to revise the whole thing. And the superintendent said, State Superintendent Tony Thurman said, well, we'll add some stuff about the Jews, but all the other stuff we're going to leave the same. He put it in more politic terms, but that's what he said. So anyway, the legislature, which was going to make this model curriculum required to graduate in California, said to the state board and to the State Department of Education, come back in a year or so when you've got something that we can really consider. So let me just say a few things about what can be done. California can get rid of Common Core. It doesn't have to have Common Core. Indeed, your local district can, it'll be hard to do, but all these standards are voluntary. They say in them somewhere, this is suggested. You don't have to do it. There's burdens to doing that, but you could do that. You still have to take the tests that are based on this. But the point is, no school district has to really follow this. But we should repeal it at the state level. And we had better standards before Common Core. We had either the highest or tied for the highest in all our fields. Standards, so standards are like a list of the topics to learn in each grade. Okay, another thing is not only our ethnic studies, which needs to be revised, but our history standards are full of socialist and politically correct things and lots of identity politics, including sexual orientation politics that have just taken over the standards. And so they should repeal and start over with the history standards. And they normally have like 7-year cycles on this sort of thing. These are so bad that they need to be gotten rid of right away. And this ethnic studies thing, they should scrap the whole thing. They should not do the, so I'm done. I was getting signals from me, so. Delighted to have, I'm delighted to give you indigestion. All right. I think Lance is going to be introduced now.
Yeah.
I'm called the Smarter Balance tests. And these were paid for by you as taxpayers, the tests, and they're tied to the Common Core. And the taxpayers spent, let's say, $176 million paying for these tests to just create them, okay? And then the Department of Education gave the states money to kind of implement them, and they have to buy computers, and of course, lots of problems with that because computers are not always working at test time, and they have to have computers that you can't somehow use to look up the answer, and they have to be in perfect working order on test day and everything. Part of the idea of a standardized test is that the conditions have to be standard for each student taking the test. That's even really the meaning of it. So this is difficult enough to do, but if you have computers, it can, technically things can go wrong, or you could be in a kind of quasi-unstandardized condition if you're one of these school districts where kids have to go into a computer lab because you don't have one computer for each student. Okay, so got that. So then, normally, with standardized testing, the grades on the test go, if it's a normal test, and go up a tiny bit each year. Basically, this is because, not that this can happen, of course, that the teachers find out the questions and give them to the students. That's obviously cheating, and that should be illegal and punished. But then essentially the system gets adjusted to the testing. So the normal pattern, and this has been observed over many decades, is that you get about a 2% growth rate, okay, in the scores. Well, we're not seeing that with Smarter Balance. They're going like this, okay, which means something is wrong with scoring these tests. All the scores might be invalid on that. I'm not kidding you. It is quite possible that all the scores are invalid. And here is my benign theory of what's going on. I'll give you also a less benign theory. So the benign theory is that when they don't have the exact same test every year. They vary the items. They put in new test questions. Now, when you put in new questions, it's a very delicate process to equate this year's test with the previous test. If you don't do this right, you'll have jumpiness in the results. My belief is that that's what's happening. Now, that's the benign one. Okay, that still means that the test results are invalid unless they rejigger them quite a bit somehow. And maybe it's impossible. The more benign, the less benign view is that because the Common Core has a lot of fuzzy goals in it, think critically, be imaginative, use multiple algorithms to solve. That means multiple problem-solving techniques to answer this question. Lots of estimation and so forth. So let's say that the teachers believe that they should concentrate on these more fuzzy, less measurable goals. You could have strange slips and even this decline we're kind of observing in the measurable things. addition, subtraction, multiplication, right, combination, and so forth. And so that could be partly what's going on. In addition, and I'm going to conclude with this, let's say they're right. Let's say the results are right. We have a completely obscurantist, impossible to understand accountability system in California. So instead of A, B, C, D, F, we have low, very low, maintained, improved with colors. Okay. So they combine stuff in not just the academic results, but subjective things that the teachers say about the classroom or attendance or things like this. So instead of holding the kids and the schools and the teachers accountable for what the kids have learned, which is the primary thing, I mean, even attendance, right, is supposed to be going toward learning something during that time. They have put in these various masking, vague things that block knowing the real results of academic achievement. So this is very disappointing, and it makes gains more difficult to achieve. So I will close with that.